We are living in a trickster moment. This moment in history, especially inside the United States, is the trickster dialed up to 1,000. My name is Boston Blake. I have a certificate in applied mythology from Pacifica Graduate Institute. I was raised by a depth psychotherapist. Depth psychology has been a huge part of my life since I was a kid, not just from my mother, but it always made sense to me. I was exploring depth psychology before I knew what to call it. And now I am an ICF PCC coach. Mythological studies, applied mythology, and coaching work really, really well together because they help us see the patterns in ourselves that we don't necessarily recognize. Not just our patterns in ourselves, but patterns in the world around us at just about every scale. Archetypes, the gods and goddesses of ancient Greece and Rome and Egypt, archetypes of love and war and death, these are the perennial concerns of humanity. They are always there. They have always been there. They will always be there. And they are always interacting in repeating patterns. Studying depth psychology, studying archetypes, studying myth helps us see what's happening in the world at the level of pattern. Sometimes they're massive waves in the ocean and they're really bigger than we are. Sometimes they're ripples and they're things that we can work with and dance with. They show up in the body, they show up in nature, they show up in communities, they show up on the planet. I was also a body worker for 20 years, and that's important for how I interact with this work because it happens in the body. Something that Joseph Campbell suggested is that what we see as archetypes, the patterns we see outside of ourselves, are actually happening in the body. They're physical, physiological phenomena that then we see outside of ourselves. We think about holding tension, we think about flexibility, we think about integrity. All of these things are phenomena of the body. I want to tell you a little bit about Hermes. Hermes was either the last or the next to the last Olympian to rise. Depending on which story you go with, Dionysus might also be the last. But Hermes was the son of Zeus and a nymph, Maya. And Maya was hiding in a cave. She was a very introverted nymph. She was hiding in a cave, and Hermes was born to her in that outland, not born in the castle, not born in the kingdom, but as a bastard child on an island. And so he's half legitimate and half marginal. He was born at dawn, and by noon, he had invented the lyre. He had fashioned it from this tortoise shell that he found outside, and by evening, he had stolen his brother Apollo's sacred cattle. And the story of stealing the cattle is where we start to see how Hermes works. So Hermes, he's just been born. He's but a wee babe, and he sneaks out of his cradle, and he finds Apollo's herd, the cattle of the sun, and he drives them backwards. And he's hiding the tracks so that Apollo can't track them. And then he sacrifices the cattle, meat to the gods. And then he slips back into his cradle and wraps himself in his clothes, and he just pretends like nothing has happened. And Apollo, who is a god of truth and prophecy, can't find his cattle. Eventually, he tracks Hermes down through his own prophetic talents, and Hermes denies everything. And he's so charming, and he's just shameless. He points out very reasonably that he's just a newborn baby. And what would he want with cattle? So Apollo, who is absolutely certain he's right about this, drags the baby before Zeus to adjudicate. And Zeus is delighted. Zeus thinks this is just the most wonderful thing. He sees himself, he sees the mischief, he sees the delight, he sees his own youthful self in him. And he says, okay, but you've got to give the cattle back to Apollo. Well, that's not really doable because cattle are gone, so there's no making this right. but he's got this lyre that he made from the tortoise shell. And so he starts playing the lyre, and Apollo loves it. And so Apollo is satisfied with trading the lyre as restitution. And so the lyre for the cattle. And so Hermes has not conquered his way to legitimacy, he has traded his way to legitimacy. He's intelligent, and this combination of intelligence and charm, Zeus realizes just how valuable this can be, and it makes him a messenger of the gods. And Zeus extracts a promise from Hermes. He says, you have to promise that you will not lie anymore. And Hermes says, okay, but I'm not promising to tell exactly the truth. And that liminal space is where Hermes lives. I'm not lying, but what I'm saying isn't quite the truth. That seems to be the world we live in. Hermes is associated with commerce, with humor, wit, and he's moving so fast you can't see him. He's the messenger of the gods. He's got to be everywhere. With currency, with money, with communication. If there's a god of the internet, it's Hermes. And if you take the internet and you take currency and then you look at cryptocurrency, cryptocurrency seems like the most Hermes thing that could possibly exist. What used to be gold, and then it became paper, lighter and faster, and now it's something that actually doesn't exist in physical form. You can't hold a Bitcoin. That's very Hermes. You can't touch it. You can see the effects of it. And the narrative around cryptocurrency is a trickster narrative. The goalposts keep changing. First, it was going to be this, and the value was untraceability. That's not true. Okay, well, now the value is a store of value. Well, that's not true. Okay, well, now it's a hedge against inflation. That's not true. But by continuing to create a new narrative, it becomes, people are still like, oh, I want that. And that is very Hermes. That isn't to say that narrative doesn't have value. The narrative does. Narrative can actually bring things into being. In politics right now, there's a phrase that is getting tossed around: flood the zone with shit. That's Trickster. That's Hermes. Just say so much about so many things, and then everybody is swimming around. And if you're not looking at, you go, oh, that's what's happening. Even if they know that's what's happening, they still get lost in it. And Hermes just has them spinning around and spinning around. And if you can pull back and go, all right, we just need to take that chunk and go, there's the trickster at work. We live in a world that is obsessed with the hero's journey. The hero's journey is a pattern in storytelling that was identified by Joseph Campbell, and it has been turned into something that I don't think it was ever really, quote unquote, meant to be. It is now something that you use in order to elicit a familiar reaction that gets people to buy your stuff. Also, there's Hermes again. But the hero's journey, the trickster, is very rarely something we like to encounter. It usually occurs as an obstacle. It occurs as something that we have to deal with. As I was getting ready for this live stream, everything was working, and then I turned it on, and suddenly my camera is not mirroring me. So if I move one way, it moves the other, and I'm constantly checking for that. The feed didn't have enough juice to hold for a minute. All these things that I had set up and dealt with just moments before suddenly weren't working. Very Trickster. But it gets things moving forward. It moves me into problem-solving mode. In a hero story, we tend to think of the trickster as the enemy. And if you blow this up to, I don't know, religion, the trickster becomes evil. The trickster becomes the villain. In the Garden of Eden, the serpent is the trickster. When the trickster convinces Eve, says, here, eat this. Yes, they get expelled from the garden, and the whole story begins. It's the birth of consciousness. The trickster shows up when things are calcifying. It can be difficult to remember the world before 2020, but in 2020, a lot of people started saying, I just want to go back to normal. I just want to go back to normal. I just want to go back to normal. Well, in 2019, I was so burned out I could barely see straight, and I never want to go back to that again. Normal sucked. Normal sucked for a lot of people. But the events of 2020, the pandemic, was so disturbing, and people just wanted to go back to something predictable. But it had never been normal. People were just accustomed to it. But then the pandemic happened, and people did all kinds of different things. They started new businesses. They had mental breakdowns. They developed new hobbies. They developed drug problems. All kinds of things happened out of it. At the cultural level, we ended up with a real, I think, a real loss. Instead of taking it as an opportunity to move things forward into something new, to create something new, there's been this real push to go back to this imaginary thing that was before, back to a golden age, back to when things were better. The trickster can run wild in this territory. The trickster, and I think now what's happened, if we connect these dots with Zeus, the Zeus archetype, that executive function, that kind of leadership is missing. And Hermes has slipped into the throne room and is like, no around, huh? And he puts on Zeus's toga and he grabs Zeus's scepter and he hangs out and starts telling a story. And he starts a movement away from the center, a movement of chaos. He's not evil. It's more about entertaining himself, and it's more about, let's just see what happens. Let's see what happens. There's no rhyme or reason to it. And and all of the gods have this in common. There's no sense of consequence. There's no sense of consequence. But what if there's a gift inside of it? What if there's a gift inside of the chaos? What if being introduced to this world where we accept leaders saying the phrase alternative facts, it's not just the trickster who says that, it's also the trickster who accepts that. That's kind of a wild thing, really. Alternative facts. And weaving this story, and then the unexpected consequences, making a promise about releasing something that had been hermetically sealed. This is where we get the word hermetic, is from Hermes. These hermetically sealed documents that actually implicate the trickster. And so the trickster says, here, I'm going to give you these. This is, oh, not really. But now people are going, oh, no, we really want these. And what that has done is it's created a we see you moment. There's a feeling right now. I've heard there's so many people saying it feels like the end of the world. Humans have been saying that for millennia. It's written down. Why is it different this time? There are real differences because climate change, but also we don't know what it was like. Everything seemed like the end of the world when it seemed like the end of the world. This is a Western civilization thing. The word apocalypse comes from apocalypsos, and it means something like to uncover, the uncovering, the unveiling, to the removal of a veil. This experience of the trickster playing this game of revelation, of hide and seek, has drawn people's attention to the veil. and all these things are collapsing. So it really does feel, if apocalypse, if this, the end of an era, the end of something, it is the dying of a thing. It is recognition that the world that was is no more. This, by the way, is true every minute of every day at the micro. We're just looking at it at the macro, at scale. And so the trickster, just by let's see what happens, has created a situation where now there are conflicts and battles and war, like waging war without, importantly, consulting any kind of counsel. This is the whole idea of the Olympians. This is what made Zeus Zeus. And Hermes just isn't interested in any of that. The trickster isn't interested in any of that. And the trickster also had a function that he's not getting to perform. The trickster, in his primary role, or in his primary function, is the messenger. He's also the psychopomp. Psychopomp is the transfer of souls. He could move between the underworld, Olympus, and the earth. He's the only god, the only deity who could do that. And Zeus and the kings had jobs for him. There were messages to deliver that needed to be delivered, and they needed to be delivered with charm and care. Things need to be understood, and the gods needed to be well received. Well, without anybody giving them the message, without him being put to good use, left to his own devices, we have a whole bunch of things that don't really exist. We have things moving so fast that, move fast and break things. There might be no more trickster phrase, no more Hermes the trickster phrase than that. Move fast and break things. That's the world we're living in. People who are moving fast and breaking things without any concept of the consequences. But by giving communication a purpose, I don't mean just delivering a message, I mean being in communication, we can start to reclaim this by being curious about other people, by receiving the messages that we're given, evaluating them, bringing in other archetypes to work with this. So the story about Hermes and Apollo, the reason I use that particular story is because Apollo is a very different part of the spectrum from Hermes. Apollo is a god of truth and light. He shines the light in the darkness. He is a god of law and order and civilization. Too much Apollo and you get rigidity and calcification. Too much Hermes and you get the breakdown of everything. We need both. In fact, we need all of the Olympians, but this is an antidote, bringing critical thinking, bringing truth, bringing individual truth. I really worry about saying something incorrect on something like this. And people say, oh, you told a lie. I'm like, no, I got something wrong. And if I do, I want to correct it. But then I see these people who have hundreds of thousands or millions of followers just spouting bullshit and taking no responsibility for it at all. They may think they're telling the truth. They may not. I don't know. They don't seem to care. That's Hermes. That's just, let's just see what happens. It doesn't matter. Let's just be heard and just keep moving, move fast and break things, like democracy. So the value of this perspective is by being able to look at it as a psychological, as a mythic pattern that comes in response to a calcified world. We were moving in a direction that was untenable. We still are. This is a collapse. And it's so easy to make this about individuals. That's a real trap. These patterns are working themselves out on a massive scale. I think there's a major reorganization going on. And so the question that comes up is, and this, by the way, is the crappy thing about mythology, is it doesn't give you answers. It puts the responsibility on you. If this is what's going on, if we are in this trickster moment where lies are the order of the day, and we really can't trust what's coming to us, that there are these movements working to dismantle the previous generation, human generation, social generation. What's the word I'm looking for? Kingdom. Who are you going to be inside of it? Who do you want to be inside of it? What is right for you to do inside of it? Another function of Hermes right now is getting people on the bandwagon. Join me, do my thing. This is what you need to do. This is the right way to resist. This is the right way. This is what we need to do to overcome, to overthrow, to get a handle on this. That's a great message. I'm asking you to look inside. I'm asking you to look at your own talents, your own values. Look at what you want your life to look like, what you want the world to look like, what you want your life to look like in the world as it is, not the world the way you wish it were. That's the trickster. Oh, well, I'm going to design my life in a world that works a different way. You gain power in a trickster world by looking at the world as it is, by looking at how the trickster is functioning and dealing with it at that level. Calling it evil doesn't help. It shouldn't be that way, whatever. This is what's happening. How are you going to be with it? How are you going to navigate it? How are you going to mitigate it? This is the work. Maybe you're someone who feels compelled to write about it. Maybe you are someone who feels compelled to post about it on the Hermes stream. Maybe you have a completely different approach. Maybe you're somebody who really wants to get your body involved, and maybe you want to march every week. Maybe you're a playwright and you are writing a musical about one of the biggest public murders of our time. Maybe you have an idea for an invention. Maybe you want to create a community garden. I don't know. I'm throwing out all of these things because I don't know your values. But I do want to encourage you not to listen too much to me about what you should do or how you should think, and not to listen to anybody online. And if you do, spend some time finding out who they are. The marketing gurus right now, oh my God, Hermes in the marketing world, it's not subtle. I went through a whole thing in 2024 and 2025 exploring the different marketing gurus because I wanted to grow my coaching practice. And I looked at what they were teaching and the ethics that like there was just no moral center, just nothing there, which was horrifying. So this marketing world is another face of the trickster, getting people to buy things they don't need. I'm in Mexico and I'm watching the United States from the outside, and everyone who is burned out and exhausted, same way I was, overwhelmed by the stream of bullshit coming at you. And I was here when there was the dust up in Puerto Vallarta. I got a lot of texts from people who were worried about me, which was very kind. But it was a little like, if I had been in Texas and people were focusing on what was happening in Minneapolis, there was no real meaningful correlation between those things. But the narrative that's being told to Americans about America, about the rest of the world in relationship to America, is, I think the technical term is hogwash. And now on the outside of it, it's not even a matter of it being obvious. It's just, good God. The people here living meaningful, purposeful lives. Simple, unhurried, in the community with their families, a different set of values. Hermes is not the value here. It's not the value. It's much more Hestia, much more the hearth, the family. And that's another energy that we can bring in. So when I was pitching this talk, that myth offers us a way of diagnosing our current moment. And that's what I've spent a lot of time doing. The antidote is cultivating relationships with both the disintegrated archetypes and the archetypes that we're more comfortable with. By bringing our psyche together with more choice, more availability, we start to create a conversation between and among these archetypes. And so they don't throw us off our center when they flare up, when they gain extra power. We'll go, oh, here's a Hermes moment. I can dance with this. It can go a lot of other directions. You could get very into strategy, you could become very Athenian, and then become so distant and cold that you forget about the impact of the decisions that you make. It's another trap you can fall into. Any archetype can burn you, but one can be the medicine for another. I don't want to say use them. I think when you start saying you're going to use an archetype, you're just begging for trouble. But dancing with them, inviting them, finding how they can benefit your life, and also being on the lookout for where they can become my maiden voyage. I've created 2 links, which let's see, does that get me there? Yeah. So if you want to subscribe to my newsletter, it's bostonblake.com/newsletter. Catchy, right? Or if you want to contribute to this work, if there was something useful or valuable in here, I have bostonblake.com/contribute. You can just make a one-time, or if you want to become a subscriber, that's an option. I'm really excited about where this work is going. This maiden voyage, I'd be curious to know about your experience of it. For me, it has been really fulfilling, but it's also been kind of chaotic. So if you did watch this, and if you found value in it, I would love it if you would either send me an email or leave me a comment, leave something in the YouTube comments. Let me know what this was for you, what was valuable. It will help me create more and hopefully better work going forward. Thank you for your time. I very much appreciate it. I wish you well, and I'll see you later.